You are listening to All Clear, a Firefighter Health and Wellness podcast. This episode, The Power of Cultural Change with guest Lee Hopkins. How you doing? My name is Travis. Over there is my co-host Eric. How you doing, Eric?
Good.
And we have a guest with us today. We'll be interviewing Lee Hopkins. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Eric, since you and Lee go back a long ways, and I'll let you introduce him. And here we go.
I appreciate that. I'm pretty excited to have Lee on with us tonight. I met Lee Hopkins about 3 years ago down in South Carolina at the Emergency Services Behavioral Health Summit put on by the Low Country Firefighter Support Team. And we've had Gerald on with us, who heads up that program. And I thought it would be really cool to have my buddy Lee on here. Lee has quite an amazing story, and we might touch on that this evening. But Lee is doing great things down in the Low Country, the PD area of South Carolina. He's a PD regional coordinator for the Low Country Firefighter Support Team, and he also runs a Facebook page called Fat Babies Junkyard Dogs. And if you guys haven't checked that out, you need to.
That sounds interesting.
He does an excellent program called Holding the Standard that he's traveling all over the state of South Carolina, even up into North Carolina, presenting that. And I'm pretty excited to be able to talk about some of that tonight as well. So, Lee, if you could, tell us a little bit about yourself, what got you involved in peer support, in your past involved in the fire department, if you could, please.
Yeah. So my name's Lee Hopkins. I'm retired out of the city of Hartsville Fire Department. Basically, just a little bit about me. I'm 46 years old. Got a cool little family, married, got a family. And basically my fire career started, man, when I was in diapers. My dad was a volunteer fireman in Pine Ridge, South Carolina, which is right above Hartsville. And there's pictures of me at the firehouse in diapers. And basically, I started there as a volunteer when I think I was 13 or 14 years old, whenever you could be a junior member. Moved up there, started doing my training, had pretty much all of my training done before I was 18 years old. Went on into the Hartsville Fire Department, got a whole lot more training, and ended up becoming a lieutenant there, and I served there for as a company officer for, I think it was about 13 years before I retired. I was a company officer. So young guy when I was promoted. Yeah, and I have a pretty unique story for sure. I don't know how you want to go about me sharing it, but I don't mind, sharing my story and how I got involved in peer support.
I'll let you run with that, Lee. Whatever parts you feel comfortable with.
I'm an open book. You know that, my friend. I'm an open book.
Yeah, brother.
Just basically between 2012 and 2014, it started in 2012, June 25th, 2012. I had a small child, a female child that was shot in the chest, and had some. That's kind of when my issues started with mental health problems. And it was just, I was talking to one of my buddies the other day, and we were talking about our experiences. And between 2012 and 2014 in Hartsville, we had over 10 child deaths under the age of 5.
Wow, that's rough.
It was just a lot of stuff going on. And Gerald came in, and him and Phil Hawkins, and y'all don't know Phil. Phil's passed away, but they used to come into the firehouse whenever we'd have these bad calls, and I would always run the other way. I'd either have something to do, or both of y'all probably about my same age, a little bit older. I'm better looking than Eric, but I mean he's the same age as me. But when you come up in the fire department at that age, or in that culture that we had back in those days, you really didn't talk about things, or say anything if you were having mental issues. But I kind of just would avoid them for a long time, and man, just basically just kept beating myself up, and started having nightmares real bad, and ended up in 2014 backed up in the woods with a pistol, and wrote a suicide note. And I don't know what caused me not to do it. I guess it was intervention by the Lord is the only thing I can value it to. But so anyway, getting back to my story, Phil was at the fire department one day, and I just like to explain a little bit about Phil, because Phil's the reason I really got help. Phil's 6 foot. Phil was 6'7", probably 380 pounds, just a huge man. But he was he was a battalion chief in the Charleston Fire Department. Grew up through the ranks. One of the neat stories about Phil is he was the first captain on the ladder companies. Back in the day during segregation days, all the ladder companies in the city of Charleston were black, and Phil was the first white captain in the black ladder companies. So
wow,
just an amazing guy. He had an amazing story himself, but he had that Charleston slang, that Charleston talk. And I walked by him one day when he was sitting in the firehouse. Phil didn't really say a whole lot, but he grabbed me by my arm and he said, "Bubba, how much longer are you going to fight this?" And I went to the bathroom and I just broke down. Well, that leads to a couple of weeks later, another bad call. Just kind of froze up on the call, and I called the fire chief on a Sunday afternoon at 5 o'clock. Told him what was going on, what had been happening with me, and I was immediately taken out of work I was probably out of work. It was over a couple of months. It was probably 3 to 4 months. Went to a clinician in Charleston named Amanda Custer, which was a part of the Charleston program, and did something wonderful that we like to talk about a lot is EMDR.
Yes.
She did EMDR.
What is EMDR?
EMDR is a trauma therapy. It's a eye movement. I don't know the exact name of it, but they kind of bring you up to a certain level where you have some anxiety, and then they use touch to bring you back down. It's not hypnosis or anything like that, but they use eye movement, touch. They'll touch you on the shoulder, maybe your knee. Kind of brings you back down. Kind of brings you back down from that. And man, I did 7 or 8 sessions of that, and I started sleeping at night and seen the difference in that, and was back at work and back on the engine, 3 or 4 months later, and doing well.
That's awesome.
In EMDR, just to throw the real name of it, EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy, and it's extremely beneficial to start processing the trauma events, and it's a great technique. It's a great therapy. I've been involved with it throughout my recovery process, and it has done amazing work for me. So, yeah, sorry to interrupt.
No. So got back on the fire truck and went back to work, and there's Eric, it's kind of hard to explain about EMDR. How many levels and layers. It's almost like an onion. I would say like an onion. They piggyback one layer at a time. Wouldn't you say?
That's a pretty good analogy. Mine were my experiences with EMDR were my PTSD, complex PTSD. Almost 30 years of compounded trauma that was never dealt with, never processed correctly, and just carried along. And so when I started seeing an EMDR therapist, pinpoint specific events. So that little girl, for example, we would focus on that. The therapist would ask very specific questions about that incident. You would follow a light back and forth, or a tapping motion, or the little sensors in your left and right hand, in very short segments, usually no more than 30-second segments that you're going back and forth with that. And then another series of questions and feelings come up, and, usually go through that process about 3 different times per event. And I've had multiple experiences with the MDR to try to help me get through these difficult memories, and it's been absolutely amazing to see how it works, and especially when I despise the word trigger, but when a triggering event comes up, compared to how I used to feel about it to compared to how I feel after having EMDR'd that specific event and, have processed that trauma. It's absolutely a phenomenal tool in the resource kit of these therapists that we're referring people to.
Yeah, and I think the main thing that I've seen, or the switch that I've seen as far as mental health therapy is concerned, is the switch in the culture in the fire departments now. Especially around here. I'm very fortunate to have really good relationships. And I say that word a lot, relationships, but I believe the fire service is all about relationships and having good relationships with fire chiefs and gaining the trust of the guys and girls, gaining their trust, getting inside the fire department and being able to be able to get things done. It's nothing. Travis, we had this conversation me and Eric did last week when we were together a couple weeks ago now. But it's really good, and it makes you feel real good to have the trust of the fire chief to say, "Hey, I need to get this guy off of work and get him some treatment." And there's not a question, not a he needs to go certain routes. It's yes, sir, we'll get him off of work right now.
Yeah. And, that's one of the things that Eric and I have talked about, and not just with mental health, but, with a lot of things, the fire service is becoming more proactive than just reactive. And it's good to see that cultural shift. And anytime you change the culture in the fire department, that's a huge accomplishment. And I think we are starting to see that. And with your experiences that you're mentioning there, no doubt we're seeing it on the mental health front as well.
Oh yeah, no doubt. One of the great things is, I was very fortunate to have a chief that backed me. I don't think people realize how important leadership that backs their people is, or it's just a huge move inside of your fire department to have leadership that has the ability to do what they did for me.
And seeing you brought that up. I had that on my question list a little further down, but we'll dive right into that. When we were at the Behavioral Health Summit, during my speaking piece, I specifically targeted, I guess, in my talk about leadership, and that if you're saying that you're going to take care of your people and you truly appreciate the people that you have working for them, you better stand up to that and you better back them however you can. That we're not disposable employees, and we're not superhuman. We don't wear a cape. We don't wear a big S on our chest. And at the end of the day, we are regular human beings that just do a different style job. So the leadership aspect of it, I know your program, Holding the Standard, you talk about a whole lot of things in the fire service, but specifically with the leadership, how important is that, and what role should they have with the behavioral health side of what we do as a profession?
Leadership is everything, Eric. If we don't have good leaders inside the fire department, then we're not going anywhere with anything. Behavioral health, aggressive fire tactics, aggressive search tactics, putting citizens first in some, when we have to, we're not getting anywhere without good leadership and being able to follow people that, I think it's just having people in there, especially on the mental health side of things. If you've got a fire chief or a battalion chief or I would even go as far as your city manager or your human resources person. If you have their support, then your chances of getting better is going out the roof compared to what it would be if you didn't have the support of the leadership.
I
And
agree
you know that,
100%.
and that's something that I can speak for, like in Concord. I'm sorry. I know that like the relationship between our fire chief and our HR director is very good. Whenever there's a question that's unique to fire, he can usually find out what needs to happen from HR in a matter of minutes, maybe an hour or so. So forging those relationships within the city is very key to making programs like this work.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Because if that guy has that support, then that's one thing off his checklist of 150 things.
For sure.
Yes. And, along with the support, I don't like, it's the old fire department, adage, things that we don't like. We don't like the way things are and we don't like change. But a cultural shift in the fire service of what you mentioned and the way that I was brought up in the fire service, that we don't talk about this kind of stuff. Leading from the front, having those good leaders, helping break this stigma of feeling like we can't talk about this kind of stuff. If you have a leader that is recognizing certain things, or somebody that is vulnerable enough in that leadership role, either a company officer, chief level officer, or a department head, say, hey, I've struggled myself, and just start sharing bits and pieces or whatever it is, to let their people know, oh my gosh, this is the big man, white shirt, gold brass, and they're being able to share this should make that newer person or that younger firefighter coming in saying, hey, if they can do it, I can most definitely do it. Is it always going to work that way? No. But unfortunately, we're not seeing that as much as we should, I don't think.
Yeah.
For sure. I agree with that.
And let's be honest, guys. Let's be honest. We still have fire departments out there that's old school mentality that doesn't worry about mental health, or that's just a checkbox for them,
Do you have an idea that you can't quite get out of your head and onto paper? Does your department need updated shirts? If so, you need to talk to the guys over at Studio Print Shop. We've been working with the guys at Studio on making some of our ideas become reality. Whether you need screen printing, embroidery, or graphic design, they have you covered. They're even working with the latest direct-to-garment printing technology to make your ideas come true. Check out their link on our website or go to studioprintshop.com and get 10% off your first order when you use the discount code ALLCLEAR. Studio Print Shop, creativity fueled by passion and vision. Yes. Do you find that more in the volunteer service, or do you see that kind of across the board in all levels of fire service? Because from the Cancer Alliance side, I've seen it mainly on the volunteer side where they're not as progressive, but it's starting to change.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much across the board here in the state of South Carolina. You'll see some departments that are very involved in mental health and always call them in, and you have some departments that have serious incidents and you never hear a word out of them. But there again, I hate to keep going back to it, but it's all about who is the chief or who is the leader of the group. And I hate to put it that way because I don't want to put everything off on the fire chief, certainly, but you've got to have somebody that's proactive when it comes to mental health. If you don't have that, then a lot of times the guys and girls are not going to reach out because they'll feel targeted. Or we mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. We're very big in South Carolina on private clinicians, and we just think that works better than sending them to the Eric, I'm looking for a word right now, Eric. I'm looking for EAPs.
E- e-
EAPs.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Because employees think that that's going to determine whether they get their job or not knowing that really if they're not suicidal that the EAPs can't go back and tell the fire chief what's going on, but that's what they think a lot of times.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That can be very
Absolutely.
damaging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we just, and it's nothing against EAPs, but we just find that private clinicians work better. Um, and really it's the point of us being able to get out and get those contacts. We have over 20 clinicians on our team, and I have 3 specifically that I can call at 3 a.m. if I need to, and they'll have them in 2 or 3 days, instead of, we all know, sometimes it's 2 or 3 weeks before we can get somebody seen, but I've been able to build those relationships, and there we go with that word again, relationships. But it means a lot to be able to call a clinician at 3 a.m. if you've got somebody that's suicidal.
And that just, reiterates, some of the hard work that we do as peer teams of making sure we create those relationships and we cultivate them with the clinicians. And I know it's a huge sense of relief off of me as a peer supporter, to know that I've got that relationship in my back pocket. And like you said, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, if I have a contact and I need to talk to a clinician, I'm the same way you are, Lee. I've got 2, 3, potentially 4 of them that I know I can pick the phone up and call, and they're going to answer that phone for me. That's huge. It really is.
But I've learned
We're fortunate to have those relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. I've learned so much over I've been doing this probably 10 to 12 years now, but I've learned so much from Gerald, man. I know y'all interviewed him the other night, but he's like the godfather of mental health as far as I'm concerned. And
I called him the OG.
yeah, yeah. But I learned so much from him, man, and he's been an inspiration to me, and he's gave me a lot of good information over the years. I always tell people, Gerald's on Friday when I'm on Tuesday. So
Yeah.
that's a fact. But yeah, man, that's kind of my story. I, I I pride myself on being as busy as I can with the mental health side of stuff. I'm always talking to fire chiefs. I'm always talking to firemen, paramedics, dispatchers. Have a really good relationship here in Florence with dispatch and law enforcement. We've had several major events here in Florence. We had a paramedic run over and line of duty death here not long ago. It hadn't been quite a year yet. I think it's August the 8th, maybe a big year. It's coming up.
Yeah.
The Florence 7 shootings, I don't know if y'all have heard about that, but we
Yep.
multiple officers shot, and we had the opportunity to be inside the police department, and see that side of the law enforcement side. Gerald actually spent about, I think, 5 or 6 days up here with me, and we were able to get inside EMS and dispatch and the police department. So, I hate to say this because it's a good thing and it's a bad thing, but we have a lot of experience with it now.
Yeah.
I
agree.
I was
Go ahead,
telling
Jarvis.
Eric, sorry, we had a situation come up here in our area a couple of, about 2 weeks ago, Eric?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say a whole lot about it because it hasn't made the news, which I don't know if that's critical or not. But
Yeah.
I was talking to the 911 supervisor. He didn't take the call, but one of his folks took the call for what had happened, and they were visibly shaken. And it was one of those things where it's like the guys in the fire department are supporting the guys in the 911 center, which are in turn supporting the police department, which it kind of generated out of. But at the same time, the operator worked for EMS, or her dad did. So it was one of those things where it was like a big circle where everybody was, all right, yep, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And they kind of divided and conquered. So it's one of those things where sometimes we have to help outside of our own discipline. And it's good to see that you have the ability to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just explain to you what happened. There's a video on YouTube of a shooting in Florence. Um, Nobody was injured, but it was at the mall, and it's just a blank screen with the audio with it, and there is screaming and hollering, and you can hear the shots in the background. And I think that was the day that things kind of turned from us at the Low Country Firefighter Support Team. I called Gerald, and we both listened to that video, and we were like, we got to get into dispatch centers because they are completely blind to what's happening, but they hear everything. And then, unfortunately, a lot of times they don't get any closure from that because they don't know what happens at the end or what's at the end of the road after what's going on. So we've been very proactive in the dispatch centers because, hey, they're part of the first responder group.
And they get forgotten about. They're out of sight, out of mind is the way that I look and think about it. And whenever we get a call, into the team about a tragedy, a bad incident, whatever else, and they're asking us to come in, I always ask if they have included the 911 center, and a lot of the times that's an afterthought, and they're like, no, we haven't. And then the second question is, do we have a chaplain that's available as well? But the dispatchers, usually get forgotten about, and that you explaining that video, that would be a perfect analogy of how a dispatcher is seeing that call compared to what we see. That they have all the sound associated with it. They don't get to see what's going on. They're dealing with frantic callers, family members, whatever it is, and they don't get the closure. Usually when the police get there or we get there, that call is terminated.
Yep.
And now the gears are spinning in their head. What was the outcome or whatever else? They truly they cannot be forgotten when it comes to what we do as well. And you guys with the Low Country team, you actually have a separate team for your telecommunicators.
We do. We have a separate team for our telecommunicators, and there's a couple here from Florence that's on the team. Berkeley County's really strong in it, and Charleston County. But yeah, we just said we had to do something, and Daryl's so forward thinking, man. He's gonna make things happen, and he made that happen inside the dispatch centers. And the good, if you think about it too, they don't get any closure, but they talk to these people on the phone every day. They talk to the law enforcement officers on the phone every day.
Yeah.
They talk to the firemen on the phone to get times every day. They talk to the paramedics every day. So they know these people. They might not know them by face, but they know these people personally.
Oh, yeah. That's like when I hear some of our dispatchers, I know exactly who it is when I hear their voice, and there's no question about it. And, that not having that visual connection sometimes can make us forget about it, but it is good to hear that you guys are focusing in on that. And that is very crucial because they have a whole different set of stressors that we don't even have a full comprehension of sometimes.
So yeah. I just have one more question for you, Lee.
Okay.
The PD, well, two questions. It depends how we break this up. The PD area that you coordinate for the Low Country team, how big is that area?
It's about 10 counties, and probably, well, if you think about Florence is almost 50,000 people in Florence.
Wow.
Wow.
So I cover probably, man, it'd be hard to say, Eric. It's probably 100,000 people.
Wow. And
population-wise.
And we're talking about the mental health side of things. Just to kind of put this in perspective, the PD area, you being the coordinator, how many contacts did you have last month alone?
I think it was somewhere around 150 contacts last month.
That is absolutely amazing. And that just shows that what we're doing, Sometimes it's rough. You know it. Man, are we really making a difference? Are we having an impact? Are we changing the mindset of people? One individual having 150 contacts in a 30-day period is phenomenal.
Yeah, and it's been as high as over 200, when something really bad is going on. But like I say, even with the huge populations, the thing about South Carolina is we don't have near the firemen that y'all have in North Carolina.
Right.
We only have about 18,000 firemen statewide here, and y'all have, 48,000?
Something like that.
Yeah,
it's a ridiculous number.
Area. But, something that I find interesting, not being from the mental health background myself, is when I see the relationships that like Eric have with you, Lee, and like when he was talking to Gerald the other day, when you see that connection and you're talking about seeing 150, contacts in a month, it's important for you guys to talk to each other and kind of de-stress off each other and bounce things off and unwind. Because if you don't, who's going to help you? And if you're not there, who's going to help us? So it's good to see those relationships y'all have.
That, I referenced this in my presentation 2 weeks ago. I had a list of people who have been an integral part of my recovery, that have seen me in some of my darkest spots in my life, and Lee's name was on the board down there. I know that I could pick the phone up anytime that I needed to, and Lee's going to pick that phone up. I feel very blessed, and I feel very fortunate to have people like that, that I know I can talk to, because there's been so many times that I felt that I was alone. I didn't have anybody that I could truly, lean on when I needed to. And, showing that vulnerability that people are not going to judge me. They're going to validate the way that I feel, and they're going to be there just to be there, because they're genuinely kind-hearted, caring, and loving individuals. And I thank God for relationships like what I have with Lee, and for the hard work that he's doing. And I actually think it's a gift that we're given to be able to have those kinds of relationships. So thank you, brother.
Absolutely. No doubt. And the service that all of you guys, not just you two, but everyone on the peer support side and the mental health side, it goes a long way. And I think it's very undervalued. And like Eric, you and I have talked about the relationship between our organizations, even if it's not an incident necessarily. If you get a cancer, if you get some type of horrific news, that impacts you, your ability to be a firefighter. It impacts the department. It impacts your community potentially. So there is so much work that has to be done, and a lot of times it's undervalued. So again, thank you for what you guys are doing as well.
And your name was on the list too the other day there, Travis. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I remember Travis.
Yeah.
Oh Lord. Yep. Okay. Well, I've never seen you too dark. I thought she's doing pretty good. Nah.
Dude, I'll tell you, I am so blessed to have the people that's in my life. I really am.
Oh yeah.
I am truly blessed beyond belief of the people that's in my life. I'm glad to see you doing the cancer stuff and the initiative for cancer. I don't know if you keep up with South Carolina, but they just passed a huge bill in South Carolina for cancer, for firefighters.
Yeah, and
touch on that.
Yeah, go ahead. That is good, because we're not just North Carolina that's listening. So yeah, go ahead.
I'm not sure exactly what all it covers. There's certain different types of cancers. I think somebody that would be really good to interview would be Brad Kavetsky. He's from He's from Horry County Fire Rescue. He's a captain there, but he kind of heads up the cancer initiative here in the state.
Okay.
One good thing too, man, about my little fat baby's page, we had a guy here in South Carolina that had cancer, and I was able to get a lot of people to donate a lot of things, and we were able to raise $17,000 for him. just by doing tickets and raffles and stuff like that.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
people are very generous when it comes to things like that. And, here in North Carolina, we have an initiative that we call the Blue Ridge Grant. Asheville, North Carolina was kind of that, not just that department, but that area was a very big starting point for the recognition of cancer in the fire service here in North Carolina. And by means of help from some of the guys up there, we've been able to start putting together a fund to be able to give small grants to smaller departments to help them up their physicals, up the quality of not just cancer screenings, but, whether it be cardiac or whatever the case is. If we can help one person, we've made a difference, whether that be in mental health or in health and wellness, whatever the case is. If we saved one, we've done our job.
Did Gerald talk a little bit about our policy for mental health in the state of South Carolina? Did he talk about Provident?
I believe we touched on the Provident plan.
Yeah.
But if you would like to mention that, go ahead and do it, because you guys are leaps and bounds ahead of North Carolina on that aspect of things.
For sure.
So Travis, if somebody is a member of the Firefighters Association here in South Carolina and they have a traumatic event, they can get whatever their insurance, which most time is people here in the state of South Carolina, whatever their insurance doesn't cover, they have coverage up to $15,000 per incident. So they never see a bill. Whenever I was going through all my stuff, I never saw a bill for it. So that's another great thing that the state has done. We went to the state house and we fought to get it through workers' compensation, but we really couldn't give them a number. So what the state does is they give $500,000, and $250 goes to fire and EMS and dispatch, and $250 goes to law enforcement, and that pays for that Provident insurance claim.
And a lot of times when you deal with things like mental health and cancer and cardiac, whatever the case is, a lot of those things are intangible, and it's not something that you can put your finger on and say it was because of this on this date that happened. And a lot of times insurance companies want numbers. I mean, that's just the reality of it. And it's hard to prove numbers sometimes, not that you're trying to, hide the reality of what we're doing, but it happened 5 years ago and it's just now coming up or something like that. And when you can't prove the causation, a lot of times people don't want to listen, but we got to keep pushing and trying to get those people to pay attention to stuff like that.
Well, I will tell you this is something that's so important is legislation day. In our
you got to get out there and support. You've got to push, and you've got to be able to make those relationships again.
That's right.
Hey, this is the hot topic right now that we need to be paying attention to. And fortunately, here in North Carolina, we do get some good representation. I know Travis has had a lot of help and a lot of push on the cancer forefront of things. I have a lot of contacts that support our team and our mission and what we're doing, and they're fighting for this stuff for our first responders. North Carolina is starting to step things up over the last few years. If you're a member of the State Firemen's Association, they have $2,500 set aside for each individual member now, which is a great start.
It's a great start.
Can we potentially, hopefully, wishfully get it bumped up to something like what you guys are doing down there? Yeah, but it's baby steps, right? We're eating an elephant, so one bite at a time. We'll take what we can get, but we've got to get the people that are out there advocating and pushing the forefront for it.
Absolutely.
We've been fortunate, man, to have some really good chiefs in South Carolina that are not afraid to voice their opinion at legislative day, and it's worked. It's worked.
Yeah. And
that's phenomenal.
That's like here in North Carolina, the state, not State Fire Marshal Association, the Fire Marshals Association here in North Carolina, they push on everything from like building code issues that could impact us all the way over to health and wellness and things like that. So it's really impressive to see that the message is getting through all levels of the first responder world. And like I said, it's something that we're just going to have to keep pushing and doing, and keep preaching the gospel, so to speak, to talk about these things. And, you know, our organization typically isn't very political. You know, I personally know I'm better fighting the fights, maybe teaching somebody, you know, in a class or doing a podcast, but we have people that are very talented at doing like the legislative day and stuff like that. And, you know, use your strength for what you're good at. And for me, I'm not a political guy, but, you know, I like talking to people. So, you know, it all comes full circle. It all comes full circle.
Yeah, like I'm totally like, I'm a 3 a.m. guy, you know, the guy that comes out of the darkness. I'm not a, you know, stand up in front of the legislation and talking about anything, but I'm, you know, you can call me at 3 a.m., man, and I'm on time most of the time.
Yeah.
Well, those are the ones that make the wheels turn, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
here's
right.
an important question, Lee. Are you willing to come back and talk to us again and hang out with us again and talk some more about what you guys are doing and all that?
Dude, I'm available anytime you need me. I enjoy doing these podcasts. I enjoy talking to people, and I'm just a people person, man, and I'm just Lee Hopkins. I don't try to be anything other than that.
Yeah.
He's about as genuine a person as you will ever meet. And on a side note, how's the golf game?
Low 80s, mid to low 80s.
You're
know,
killing me.
Good day, high 70s. Good day, high 70s.
Wow.
But not as good as I used to be, man. When I was in my 20s, I was pretty good. But I played since I was young guy. So
Yeah. I had to give up playing. It wasn't good at all.
I played with Eric and them last year, and I think they were kind of like, didn't know the fat kid could play like that.
Yeah, he was. That was quite a surprise. I had heard that you were a good golfer, and when I had that opportunity to play with you last year, it was like, holy cow, this is a sleeper right here. And I tell you what, Lee can smack a golf ball. So
Well, why don't you drag him up here to Concord for Midwinter Chiefs, and we can play in the golf tournament over there.
Lee's had an experience at Midwinter Chiefs. We won't get into that story.
Yeah.
But
Be nice.
yeah,
They're nice to us. Be nice.
Yeah, that can be a sidebar conversation that I can fill you in on, Travis.
But no worries.
Come
No
on there and play
worries.
golf. I
Yeah,
would love to
if-
play golf up there.
Yeah,
got some
it's
good
going to be
golf around here.
the first week of February this year in Concord. So I'll make sure to get you that information. Travis and I are going to be there. Deb will be there with us. Alex is hopefully from FHE is hopefully going to be there. And they do a golf tournament, pre-conference. So maybe we can get a team together and go smack it around a little.
And dude,
Absolutely.
I'm not saying, Travis, I'm not saying this because you're in Concord, but Eric will back me up on this. Concord fire trucks are the best fire trucks in North Carolina. Hands down.
Yes. You like that black stripe, don't you?
Hands down. The best fire trucks in the state of North Carolina.
Hey, we've got our first tillers coming. We're excited about that too. So
That's awesome.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Tillers have been a big thing here in North Carolina over the last 2 years, especially.
Oh yeah.
But if you are not following Lee Hopkins on Facebook under Fat Baby's Junkyard Dogs, you need to. He just had a post on there the last few days, and it was like the top 3 apparatus. Was it in the state that you were doing?
It was in my state.
And so Lee is really big on that kind of stuff. So you need to jump on that page. You need to follow him.
Yeah, I love fire trucks, man. I appreciate y'all's time.
Well,
Hey,
I
no worries.
appreciate your time, brother. If any of our listeners would like to get in touch with you, what's the easiest way for them to contact you, Lee?
Fat Baby Junkyard Dogs, get on there and send me a message.
There you go, folks.
That's
Well,
a hard one to
again,
forget.
Thank you for taking the time to be here with us. And Travis, I'm sure you got one more piece that you would like to share.
Oh, absolutely. This is especially for Lee because I know he's going to love to watch your reaction. Hey, Eric, you've heard of Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of Cole's Law?
No.
It's chopped up cabbage.
Oh my gosh. Lee, you got to help us get more listeners. Yeah. We got to get more people so we can.
Hey, we're trying.
Stop
People are
this
listening.
Madness on every episode.
I don't know. I'm kind of enjoying it now. In fact, I like to watch Eric's reaction every time. That's
he just likes to see me get riled up. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Travis, Eric won't get riled up. I mean, we know that.
Well, his mustache starts twitching. That's when we know there's something up. So
yeah, got the twitch going.
That's it. Well, gentlemen, it has been awesome. Again, I'm Travis from the North Carolina Firefighter Cancer Alliance. You can find me at t.mcgaha@ncfirefightercancer.org. Eric, how can we find you?
I am Eric Stevenson. I run the First Responders Peer Support Network, and the easiest way to contact me is through my email at info@frpsn.org.
All righty. Very good. And Lee, thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll talk to y'all soon. Have a good day.
Thanks, brother.
Yes, sir.
You have been listening to All Clear, presented by the North Carolina Firefighter Cancer Alliance and the First Responders Peer Support Network. All Clear is written and produced by Travis McGaha and Eric Stevenson and recorded on Riverside FM. Opinions and views expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect the views of the podcast. Please subscribe and rate us on your podcast app of choice. Thanks, and we'll see you soon.